The desert sun beat down on the frontier town of Redemption, turning its main street into a river of dust. Boots crunched against the grit as stagecoaches rattled past, and the rickety saloon doors creaked in the heat. Clara pushed through them, her arms trembling beneath the weight of her swaddled baby. Samuel slept lightly, his soft breaths lost against the din of drunken voices and the clatter of poker chips. Every head turned. A hush, sharp as a gunshot, cut through the haze of cigar smoke. Then came the laughter. Rough cowboys slapped their knees, whiskey sloshing from their glasses. "Look at that," one jeered. A mama come to play cards with the boys. Another spat tobacco juice at the floor near her boots. "Ain't no man with her." Figures. Clara's cheeks burned, but she lifted her chin. Her dress was faded, her hands calloused, yet her eyes held the stubborn spark of someone who had nothing left to lose. She asked the barkeep if there was work, but he only shook his head and turned away. Even the sheriff, lounging in the corner, found sudden interest in his glass, humiliated. Clara turned toward the door, unaware of the shadowy cowboy in the back, lifting his gaze to watch her with unreadable eyes. Clara had once known softer days, back east where church bells rang on Sunday mornings and her father's farm smelled of apple blossoms. But those days had died the moment James Whitmore, her promised husband, rode west with sweet words and vanished without ever sending for her. When her belly began to swell, her family turned their backs. "No decent woman carries a child without a ring," her mother hissed. By the time Samuel was born, Clara had only the clothes on her back and the stubborn will to keep her boy alive. Samuel was her anchor. His tiny hands clutched her worn shawl. His eyes blue like a clear desert sky, searching the world with innocent trust. Everything Clara did, every humiliation she bore, was for him. But the townsfolk didn't see love. They saw a burden, another mouth to feed in a land where survival demanded steel in your gut and a six-shooter at your hip. Men muttered disgrace, women crossed the street. That same evening, another rider entered town. Cole Jackson. His name carried like dust on the wine. Gunman, drifter, a man who had faced death more times than he could count. A scar slashed across his jaw, a reminder of battles survived. He rode a black horse, his frame lean but hardened, and his eyes, cold as river stone, missed nothing. As Clara gathered Samuel and hurried from the saloon, heart aching from the laughter, she stopped short. Cole Jackson stood in her path, tall and silent, staring down at her with unreadable intent. The next morning, Clara rose with Samuel cradled against her chest, his soft cries waking with the dawn. Thus clung to her skirts as she walked the crooked boardwalks of Redemption, knocking on doors, swallowing pride with every step. At the boarding house, the matron sniffed at her, eyes narrowing on the bundle in her arms. No rooms for a woman with a babe. Go beg elsewhere. At the general store, the owner leaned on the counter, his belly spilling over his belt. "Work, you'll scare customers off, dragging that child around. Best move along." Even the ranch hands laughed when she asked if there was washing to be done, spitting tobacco in the dirt. "We need strong arms, not a weeping brat," one sneered. Every rejection cut deep, but Samuel's hungry cries cut deeper. Clara pressed her lips to his head, whispering, "I'll find a way. I swear it." The talk of the town was darker that day. Word spread that the Black Vultures, the outlaw gang that had bled ranches dry and left bodies in the dust, were circling back. Fear hung heavy in the air, but it was Clara who trembled most. If the Vultures took what they wanted, what chance did she and her child have? From the edge of the street, Cole Jackson watched her. He saw the slump of her shoulders, the way her hands trembled but never let go of the baby. Something in her desperation stirred an old ache in him. When Samuel whimpered, Cole stepped from the shadows and laid a coin on the counter of the general store. "Milk," he said flatly, placing the bottle gently in Clara's hands when she had nothing left to offer. The townsfolk muttered, snickering behind their hands, but their laughter soured when a rider galloped down the street, shouting the Black Vultures would ride in by nightfall, and Clara's path ran straight into their storm. Night fell heavy on Redemption. The sky burned red at the horizon before sinking into black, and with it came the thunder. Hooves, dozens of them, pounded the earth, rattling windows, shaking lanterns from their hooks. The Black Vultures rode in like a storm of dust and hate, black coats flapping, guns at their hips. cruel laughter splitting the night. Doors slammed shut, candles snuffed out, but the saloon lights still burned, and that's where they headed. They burst through the batwing doors, boots stomping. Whiskey demanded before the barkeep could even breathe. Tables overturned, women screamed, and the sheriff stayed planted in his chair, eyes glued to the wood grain as if hiding in plain sight. Outside, Clara pressed against the shadows with Samuel clutched to her chest, praying the chaos would pass her by. But one of the outlaws staggered into the night, bottle in hand, eyes mean and glassy. He spotted her, his grin widening as he stumbled closer. "Well, ain't this something?" he slurred, grabbing at the blanket wrapped around Samuel. "A little mama all alone. Guess the stories are true, ain't no man fool enough to claim you." Clara froze. Her breath caught in her throat. Samuel whimpered, and the outlaw's hand reached for him, filthy and cruel. Then came the scrape of spurs. Cole Jackson stepped from the shadow of the saloon porch, revolver loose at his side, his stance easy but coiled with danger. His eyes locked on the outlaw, cold and steady. "Step away," Cole said, voice flat as a drawn blade. The outlaw spat into the dirt, sneering, "You ain't got no man to claim you, woman." His gaze flicked to Cole, lips curling into a cruel smile. "Unless this gunslinger wants to die for you." Cole didn't flinch. His revolver never left its holster, but something in his eyes hard, steady. Lethal sent the drunken outlaw stumbling back toward the saloon doors. Muttering curses, the man disappeared inside, but not before casting Clara a look that promised he wasn't finished. Clara held Samuel tighter, her heart pounding against his tiny body. She turned to Cole, anger and gratitude warring in her chest. "I didn't ask you to fight my battles," she hissed. Her voice cracked, betraying the fear underneath. Cole tipped his hat low, unreadable. "Didn't do it for thanks." And then he was gone, boots fading into the night. The sheriff, who had watched from the porch without lifting a finger, leaned against the post, chewing a toothpick. "Careful, Jackson. That woman's cursed. Folks that stand too close to her end up bleeding. Best let her fend for herself." Cole said nothing, but the words stuck like burrs in his chest. He'd once left someone behind, someone who needed him. He'd never forgiven himself for it. And now, watching Clara cradle her boy with trembling arms, he couldn't walk away. By morning, he made his decision. He saddled his black horse and rode beside Clara to the Miller Ranch, where hands were always needed to mend fences, cook meals, and keep a rough place running. The ranch owner squinted at Clara, at the baby swaddled against her chest, and shook his head. "Don't need the trouble. Can't pay for dead weight." Clara's stomach sank. She opened her mouth to beg, but before she could speak, Cole's voice cut the air. "She's with me." The rancher's brows shot up, and Clara's heart skipped. The Miller Ranch took Clara in reluctantly at first, but hard work has a way of silencing doubt. She rose before dawn, cooking meals, mending clothes, and scrubbing until her hands were raw. Even the ranch hands, who had once snickered, began tipping their hats as she passed. For the first time since Samuel's birth, Clara felt a flicker of dignity returning. But peace on the frontier never lasted long. The Black Vultures rode in again, meaner and drunker than before. Their leader, Jeb Crow, a broad man with a scar splitting his lip, wanted blood for the insult dealt to one of his men. They swaggered into redemption, rifles on their backs, spitting venom with every step. It was Clara they sought. They found her on her way back from the ranch, Samuel bundled in her arms. Rough hands seized her, dragging her across the dirt and through the saloon doors. The crowd inside went silent, then erupted into uneasy laughter as if mocking her might soften their own fear. Jeb shoved Clara against a table, his eyes gleaming with cruelty. "Thought you could shame one of my boys, did ya? Thought you were better than us?" He leaned close, sneer curling his lip. "You're nothing but a single mother nobody wants." The room laughed, though the sound was brittle. Clara's heart thundered as Jeb's fingers reached toward Samuel's blanket. Her body froze, terror rooting her to the floor. Then the saloon doors slammed open. Cole Jackson strode in like a storm, his revolver gleaming beneath the lantern light. His jaw set in iron, the laughter faltered. His gaze cut through the room and landed on Clara. Without hesitation, he crossed the floor, tore Samuel from Jeb's grip, and held the baby close to his chest. Silence fell. Only Samuel's small whimper broke the stillness. Cole's voice carried like a gunshot, steady and fierce. "This is my son." The saloon went still as stone. Every card game, every glass of whiskey, every whispered insult gone in the breath after Cole's words. Clara's pulse roared in her ears. What is he doing? By claiming Samuel, he had thrown himself against the Vultures, against the sheriff, against the whole damn town that had branded her a curse. Jeb Crow's eyes narrowed, rage simmering beneath his scarred lip. "Your son," he spat, stepping forward. "Ain't no gunslinger fool enough to chain himself to a whore and her brat. You'll die for that lie." Cole didn't blink. He stood tall, Samuel tucked protectively in one arm, his revolver steady in the other. His silence was louder than any threat. The crowd's eyes turned to Clara. The air seemed to press down on her chest, stealing her breath. If she denied Cole, she might spare his life yet condemn herself and Samuel to ruin. If she agreed, the lie would bind them both to a war with the Vultures. Her lips trembled. Her knees shook. Then, with a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "Yes, he's the father." The room gasped. Jeb roared, and then gunfire exploded through the saloon. The saloon erupted in chaos. Gunfire cracked like thunder, glass shattered, and lanterns swung wildly as shadows leapt across the walls. Men dove beneath tables, women screamed, and the acrid bite of gun smoke filled the air. Cole moved like a storm given flesh. He shoved Clara and Samuel behind an overturned table, his body shielding theirs as bullets splintered wood inches from his back. A shot rang out, hot pain seared his shoulder, and he staggered but didn't fall. Blood seeped down his arm, but his grip on the revolver never wavered. Jeb Crow and his gang fired wild, their drunken rage turning deadly, but Cole's aim was steady. Cold. One by one, the Black Vultures dropped or fled, his bullets finding their marks with terrifying precision. The saloon, once filled with mocking laughter, now echoed with the screams and curses of outlaws realizing they had met a man who would not yield. And then something changed. The sheriff, cowardly all his days, rose from behind the bar, revolver shaking in his hand. Inspired by Cole's defiance, he fired. A ranch hand followed, then another. The townsfolk who had mocked Clara moments before found themselves fighting alongside her defender. By dawn, the Black Vultures were gone, their bodies scattered on the street, their survivors fleeing into the desert. Redemption breathed again, but Cole's strength finally gave way. His revolver slipped from his hand as his knees buckled. He collapsed against Clara, his blood staining her dress, Samuel crying in her arms. Her hands pressed against his wound, tears streaming down her cheeks. She bent close, her voice trembling, desperate. "Don't you dare leave us now." Cole did not die. Though fever raged and his wound festered, Clara never left his side. By lamplight she washed his blood, cooled his brow, and whispered Samuel's soft breathing into the silence as if the child's innocence could tether Cole to life. Day after day, she fought to keep him from slipping away. Her own strength poured into him with every rag pressed to his wound, and slowly, against the odds, he began to heal. His eyes opened, weak at first, then steady, fixed on Clara with something deeper than gratitude. For the first time in years, Cole Jackson the Drifter, the gunman, was still. He had someone to live for. The town could not ignore it. The woman they had mocked had stood fast in the face of outlaws, her courage bound to the man who'd saved them all. Whispers shifted, hat tips replaced sneers. Mothers began to greet her in the street, and men lowered their eyes in shame. The sheriff himself came to her door, his hat in his hands, cheeks red with guilt. "I must judge you, Clara," he muttered. "If you'll have it, I could use a strong woman at the office." Cole, still pale but upright, stayed near her, no longer drifting like a tumbleweed. He carried Samuel now and then, the boy's tiny hands gripping his shirt. Clara watched them together, her heart swelling. For the first time since her world had broken, she saw something new in their laughter home. The sun rose golden over redemption, spilling light across the dusty street and painting the old town in warmth it had never known. Clara walked beside Cole, her skirts brushing the boards of the walkway, while Samuel lay cradled in Cole's arms, safe and content. Where once there had been jeers and cruel laughter, Now there were nods of respect. Men touched the brims of their hats. Women smiled softly, their eyes filled with something close to apology. Cole glanced down at the child in his arms, then at Clara walking steady beside him. His voice, low and rough from years of wandering, carried a new certainty. "I finally found something worth fighting for." Clara's throat tightened as she looked at him. "We're not alone anymore." Samuel stirred, his tiny hand curling around Cole's finger, binding them all in a promise stronger than blood. Asterisk if this story touched your heart, please like the video and subscribe for more stories of kindness.